Hi, my name is Brandon, and I'm an alcoholic and addict in recovery. And I work a 12-step program. I work a program in AA for my long-term sobriety and recovery. And one of the big things that we do there, one of the most important parts of it, is the fear inventory. And part of step 4, where we go through and we really look at the fears that we have in our lives that are motivating a lot of our behaviors and what we're doing on a day-to-day basis. And so I thought it was interesting today when I was reading a little bit from The Untethered Soul by Michael A. Singer, that he talks about in this chapter, continuing from where I left off yesterday, regarding pain. He talks about going through a similar process in order to analyze your pain as we do in step 4 in AA, to really get to the root of what are the fears that are driving a lot of our interactions with the world around us. I'm going to read a couple of paragraphs from here. He says, let's take a moment to see how these layers of pain build up. He's talking about how we have layers of pain and layers of fear. So let's take a moment to see how these build up. In order to avoid the pain of rejection, you work hard to maintain friendships. Since you've seen that it's possible to get rejected, even by friends, you're going to work harder and harder to avoid it. To succeed, you have to be sure everything you do is acceptable to others. This determines how you dress and how you act. Notice you're no longer focused directly on rejection. Now it's about your choices, how you walk, what you drive. You've gone another layer further away from the core pain. If somebody comes up to you and says, wow, I thought you could afford a nicer car than that, you feel a disturbing reaction. How could that cause pain? What's the big deal if somebody says something about your car? You have to ask yourself what it is that reacted in your heart. What is that feeling? Why is that happening? People don't normally ask why, they just try to keep it from happening. You must go deeper than that and look at the dynamics of the layers that have been created. At the core is the pain. Then, in order to avoid the pain, you try to stay busy with friends and hide in their acceptance. This is the first layer out. Then, in order to ensure your acceptance, you try to present yourself in a certain way so that you can win friends and influence people. This is another layer out. Each layer is attached to the original pain. This is why simple everyday interactions can affect you so much. If the core pain was not the motivation behind proving yourself each day, what people say would not affect you. But since avoiding the core pain is why you're trying to prove yourself, you end up bringing the potential for pain into everything that happens. You end up being so sensitive that you are unable to live in this world without getting hurt. You cannot even interact with people or do other normal daily activities without events affecting your heart. If you watch carefully, you will see that even simple interactions often cause some degree of pain, insecurity, or general disturbance. So when I first read this, it was August 19th, 2017. So about 4 years ago. And I know that because I took a note on the side that says, I can identify with this so much right now. And I didn't remember that, and I wouldn't have remembered it had I not taken the note. But when I read that, I thought, man, I must have been really hurting at that point. And I was at that point in my life. I had just stopped drinking. I had been sober from alcohol for almost a little over 2 months, little over 3 months at that point. But I was still smoking pot. And so I was still in active addiction at that point, but I was a dry drunk. And I was still holding on to all of the fear and the pain that was present in my active drinking days, but that I would just drink away and drink to cope with. And it had turned me into this person who everything that happened in the world seemed to bother me, seemed to be seemed to be like something touching a fresh wound. You know, it was It was a really, really difficult time in my life. And so when I read this, I thought, okay, I need some instructions for how to deal with this. Unfortunately, he goes on to say, to get some distance from this kind of pain, you first need to get some perspective. Walk outside on a clear night and just look up into the sky. You're sitting on a planet spinning around in the middle of absolutely nowhere. You can see only a few thousand stars, but there's hundreds of millions of stars, hundreds of billions of stars in our Milky Way galaxy alone. And that galaxy would look like one star to us if we could see it from afar. You're standing on one little ball of dirt spinning around one of the stars. From that perspective, do you really care what people think about your clothes or your car? Do you need to feel embarrassed if you forget someone's name? How can you let these meaningless things cause pain? If you want out, if you want a decent life, you had better not devote your life to avoiding psychological pain. Now, this is a huge piece for us, because when I first read this, I definitely was devoting my life to avoiding psychological pain, and had for a long time. When I was 10 years old, I was diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder. And I went to see somebody about this, not because my parents noticed something and decided I should go see someone, but because I noticed the pain that I was in emotionally, psychologically, and decided that it was appropriate for me to go see somebody about it because I wanted that pain to stop. So since then, and that was the right thing to do. But I have since then really spent a lot of my life trying to avoid other kinds of psychological pain, whether it's pain of rejection of my peers or pain of failure, which is kind of all related to that pain of rejection. Um, and all this pain and the fear that stems from it, I've tried to avoid that rather than dealing with it realistically as just another thing that happens in life. It's not something that, I spend, and if you need another way to think about it, I spend more time avoiding pain than I do experiencing it. So, it's not really a very proportional relationship there. I spend so much of my life protecting myself and avoiding pain, when usually any pain I feel would be very, very temporary. So, to he goes on to talk about a little bit more about that perspective, and says, to live at this level of freedom, you must learn not to be afraid of inner pain and disturbance. As long as you are afraid of the pain, you will try to protect yourself from it. The fear will make you do that. If you want to be free, simply view pain as a temporary shift in your energy flow. There's no reason to fear this experience. You must not be afraid of rejection, or of how you would feel if you got sick, or if someone died, or if something else went wrong. You cannot spend your life avoiding things that are not actually happening, or everything will become negative. He, a couple of sentences down, he says, you must look inside yourself and determine that from now on, pain is not a problem. It's just a thing in the universe. Somebody can say something to you that can cause your heart to race and catch fire, but then it passes. It's a temporary experience. Most people can hardly imagine what it would be like to be at peace with inner disturbance. But if you do not learn to feel comfortable with it, you will devote your life to avoiding it. If you feel insecurity, it's just a feeling. You can handle a feeling. If you feel embarrassed, it's just a feeling. It's just a part of creation. If you feel jealousy and your heart burns, just look at it objectively, like you would a mild bruise. It's a thing in the universe that's passing through your system. Laugh at it, have fun with it, but don't be afraid of it. It cannot touch you unless you touch it. So, I feel like this is really critical and has been really critical for me to put pain, put fear in perspective. I've spent so much of my life trying to avoid pain and unpleasantness that either doesn't happen, um, or that isn't that bad when it does happen. And if I could just learn to relax, experience things, and even have fun with them, like he says here, and be a little bit less heavy about life. And I've gotten that advice all through my life. Lighten up, you know. And I always thought that that was silly advice because I thought life was something to be taken seriously. And one of the things I've learned in recovery is that it's not. Life is something to be engaged in. Life is something to view as a blessing. Life is something to see as a gift and something that you can give something back with. It's an opportunity for you to participate. Um, but it's not something that you have to take deadly seriously all the time. And you can have fun with life. And you just have to take a step back and give yourself permission to do that. And sometimes, especially for those of us who are in addiction or who are recovering from addiction, it's really difficult to give ourselves permission to have fun with life, especially if we've got trauma that we're dealing with. So, but things to consider. There's more in this chapter on pain that we'll get into tomorrow. In the meantime, I hope you have a great day today.